Let's listen to Marvel Tales, read by our own Woman of Marvel, Ellie Pyle, as well as VonDexter, Montegut II, and M.R. Daniel.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. A Kate Bishop story by Kelly Thompson.
My neighbor across the street is trying to kill us all. Okay, wait, we gotta go back further. Let's see where to start. I broke my leg. Actually, that's inaccurate. Ladderman broke my leg while I was doing superhero stuff during the pandemic. Oh, yeah, the pandemic. Context. Stories have to have context. Let's go further back. This is the last time, I promise. Nobody ever expected this to happen. I mean, we were all waiting for the apocalypse, of course, a zombie one, a nuclear winter one, even a Sharknado one. But the one where you have to stay home for months on end by yourself and watch your life and loved ones slip away, either metaphorically or literally or both. Yeah, nobody wrote stories about that. You know why? Because it sucks and it's boring and nobody would sign up for it. I would fight 1,000 zombie hordes before I'd be trapped in this uncertainty again. But we do what we have to do for the safety of ourselves and others, even when the ask is huge, even when the ask is weird. And I am who I am, so I wanted to do more. I wanted to help. Heck, I needed to help. It might be compulsive, but let's put a pin in that for now. Anyway, while I am someone with some very particular and impressive skills, I am not skilled at everything. In fact, I am bad at a lot. The website I tried to build for Ramon to help her surf shop get through the shutdown, she fired me. Do you know how bad a website has to be to get your best friend who is not paying you to fire you? Yeah, it was that bad. I did successfully donate blood, but there's only so much blood you can donate and only so many cookies you can eat. Well, okay, you can probably eat infinite cookies and have a great time doing it, but not if you ever want to fit into your costume again. Like a form-fitting costume with hip holes is not forgiving people. But as it turns out, surprise, surprise, that supervillains are not exactly great at following the rules. In fact, they see nothing but opportunity in times of crisis. So yeah, supervillain activity spiked real fast. Just in Venice Beach alone, we were lousy with villains making trouble. I put up some personal bests as far as taking down jerks. But, and here we get to the relevant leg bit, I was fighting Ladderman and his ridiculous stepstool minions 3 days ago with Johnny and Ramon Watts, who most people know as Fuse and Alloy, brother and sister superheroes who also happen to be two of my absolute favorite people on the planet. But I digress. Ladderman, in a deeply supervillain, deeply jerk move, broke my futzing leg. Small sidebar. To set my leg, I saw Dr. Mole at the hospital, and that guy is just terrific. Anyone that tells you he isn't the best part of the Mole Men of Los Angeles reality show is, well, they're just plain wrong. So, the leg, compound fracture, healing time 3 to 6 months, total disaster. And there we have it. After a solid little run of feeling like I was actually doing some good, I'm back to being stuck inside. Can't sew masks, can't build websites, can't donate blood, can't donate money. Did I mention I'm broke? And can't fight supervillains. In fact, I'm more dependent than ever on the kindness of friends and sometimes strangers, aka some guy that works in Ramon's surf shop, brought me a burrito today. Best burrito I've ever eaten. That man is a hero. So I'm back to feeling useless. Or so I thought. Because the neighbor across the street from me is 100% a supervillain. And now I just have to convince Johnny that I'm right. This should go well. It starts when he finds that the floor by the window, and also his favorite jacket, are soaking wet.
Kate, why is the floor all wet over here? And wait, What happened to my jacket?
I wheel my Seen Better Days wheelchair toward him, slightly sheepish. Well, it's a long story.
10 words or less, please.
Ice arrow.
All right. You can have more than 10 words. Explain.
I discovered that our neighbor across the street is a supervillain. And in an attempt to expose him and thwart his evil plans, I carved an arrow out of ice and shot it into his apartment. Johnny stares at me for a long moment, his mouth slightly open.
I have so many questions. Let's start with, why did you need an ice arrow? You have hundreds of arrows laying around. I am literally constantly getting stabbed by them.
Well, he's got that huge window, you see, with all those individual panes of glass, and I needed to break one of those panes, but I didn't want there to be evidence lying around that I had done it, so an ice arrow melts, leaves nothing behind. Cool, right?
You learned this from a movie.
It's not a question. I want to deny it, but he knows me too well. Of course I learned it from a movie.
I still don't understand why it's wet in here.
Well, carving an ice arrow is harder than you might think. A lot of trial and error.
Is that why you have 11 billion Band-Aids on your hands?
I forgot about the Band-Aids. I raise my hand. Well, if you must know, some of them are from when I burned myself while making a grilled cheese sandwich earlier.
Okay, so you broke into this man's house?
I scrunch up my nose. I feel like it's more of a gray area than a clear break-in, but sure. I shrug and shove a pair of binoculars at him. Do me a favor, though, and take a good look. Johnny raises the binoculars to his face and scans the villain's apartment. A moment later, he gasps in excitement, and I do as well. Did you see it? He looks down at me, the binoculars still in his hands.
He has a whole huge closet full of toilet paper. Dun, dun, dun.
My smile fades.
Hoarding valuable supplies might make him a terrible member of his community, but I'm not sure it qualifies him as a supervillain.
I roll my eyes. That's not what you're looking for, dum-dum. Look again, to the left of the closet. Johnny scans again with the binoculars. I bump him, pushing the view left. Left, I said. After a long pause, I can tell he's found it. So I start babbling. He's got one of those creepy supervillain bulletin boards full of his plans. Look, there's news articles, schematics, and notes all over. He's even got little red strings connecting things. Johnny lowers the binoculars again, slowly this time. He looks over at me, expressionless and gesturing to the wall beside us.
You mean one of those crazy bulletin boards like this one of yours?
I follow his gaze to my bulletin board and roll my eyes again. That is clearly a crazy superhero bulletin board, not a supervillain. The differences are subtle but important. His phone pings violently a few times, and I try hard to talk over it. For example, my board has a bunch of low-level thugs that I'm trying to tie to a bigger fish, whereas his board has the schematics of a local hospital and an insane number of articles on the pandemic and... he says unconvincingly while handing me back the binoculars.
Tell me this, Kate. If it's really an evil bulletin board, why would he have it out in plain view? And with his shades wide open?
I sit back in the chair. Well, you see, the bulletin board wasn't visible. I saw just a peek of it last night when he was home looking at it, but then he covered it up with the drape when he left. I gesture vaguely at the window and Fuse squints his eyes in that direction again. And this afternoon, after breaking the window pane with my first ice arrow, I used this second ice arrow to cut the cord to the drape. See how it's fallen to the ground? Johnny squints at the apartment again, still not convinced.
So, you broke this man's window and then wrecked some of his property because you saw the faintest hint of our supervillain plan and...
It doesn't matter why I did it. I was right. Johnny glances down at his phone, a finger raised that I should wait a moment. I huff out an impatient breath. When he's done, he looks at me. It is a look full of kindness and compassion, but I can tell he doesn't believe me.
Maybe he's just a doctor, Kate.
I frown deeply. What doctor has a villain board, let alone the schematics of his hospital? Johnny smiles at me as his phone keeps pinging.
We can talk more about this later, but don't do anything, okay?
He kisses me on the forehead and walks away. Wait, you're leaving? I roll after him, slightly desperate. Johnny turns back to me.
Kate, I know you're going stir crazy in here, but you need to channel yourself in another direction. You already wrecked this guy's window. Don't push it. It's too easy for your imagination to run wild with this, but you gotta rein it in before you do something you can't take back.
Johnny glances at his phone again.
I have to go deal with this horrible thing in Malibu, but I'll be back soon. I promise.
I sigh, defeated and jealous that he gets to leave and deal with something horrible. I wish I could go deal with something horrible. After the door closes, I turn back to the apartment across the street, staring at his crazy villain board through my binoculars. Guess I'll just have to deal with something horrible from here. 4 hours and 6 Pop-Tarts later, I am struggling to stay awake at my post by the window when my phone pings, jolting me back to full consciousness. A text from Johnny sent 45 minutes ago.
Maybe you're right. It is weird that a doctor would have schematics of his hospital. I'll swing by his place on my way home and feel him out a bit. Heart emoji.
Ah! I scream and reach clumsily for the binoculars, which promptly fall off my lap with my phone. As I reach for them, the light clicks on across the street. My villain is home. I click off my only light and stare. Johnny might need binoculars, but my eyesight is as good as it gets. I'm a futzing Hawkeye after all. But my eyes are best when I'm holding a bow, so I raise it and knock an arrow for good measure. Tracking my villain across his apartment feels so right, and also a little bit wrong. What if I am wrong? My villain looks with a wrinkled brow at his bulletin board, now naked and exposed in his apartment. He moves to the fallen drape and picks it up, confused. He crouches down and touches his carpet, probably still a bit wet from my second melted ice arrow. The crease in his brow deepens and his eyes narrow. He finally clocks the broken window pane. He comes to the window and examines it. And then he just looks out the window directly at my apartment. But it's dark here, and I don't move. It's not my first day. He squints his eyes, and it feels like he's looking right through me. I don't even breathe. He eventually turns his head, and I exhale lightly. But I can't help but gasp when I see him open his front door to reveal Johnny. Handsome and kind, just trying to do the right thing, a smile in his eyes since his mask covers the one surely on his mouth. Due to the mask, I can't read Johnny's lips, a skill the other Hawkeye, Clint Barton, has taught me, but I imagine it's something adorable and heroic, as is Johnny's way. The villain gestures him inside, and it's all I can do not to scream. Johnny, being the polite and very strong guy that he is, goes inside, unafraid and trusting. Before he can even get all the way inside, the villain slams a comically huge vase over his head. Johnny is down. I curse his kindness. He could have walked in there, made a futzing vibranium, but he probably didn't want to scare the guy. So he went in made of stupid, highly vulnerable bones and blood. Well, my villain has picked the wrong guy to hit from behind with a heavy object. As the villain rifles around in a cabinet, probably looking for something evil, I don't even hesitate to fire my already knocked arrow. It slams into the fabric of his dress shirt and pins his shirt to the cabinet with a satisfying thwack. He yells, and I can hear it from here thanks to the broken window. He spins wildly, trying to see who's attacking him while still trying to wrench himself free of the cabinet. As I knock another arrow, he manages to spin out of his shirt. Now free, he moves as fast as he can to get away from the windows. I fire my second arrow. It's not for him. This arrow crashes violently through not just glass, but some of the wood that holds the panes together. It's a catastrophic structure failure that leaves a gaping wide hole into his apartment. My villain looks up from under the arms he was using to protect himself, which is when I release my third arrow. It sails into his apartment almost happily, and when it hits some of his cabinetry with a sharp ping, it explodes into a hail of lights, temporarily blinding him. My villain scrambles to his feet, and I fire the fourth arrow. It hits him right in the chest, as intended. Safety foam has a harmless tip that then explodes into a sticky, safety foam that without help, he'll still be struggling to get out of in 3 days. I watch for long seconds as my villain struggles and cusses, and Johnny remains passed out on his floor. But Johnny is bleeding pretty badly. I pull another arrow and fire it across the street into the wall of the building. I anchor the other end in my apartment. I grab my phone, resecure my mask, and with a considerable amount of effort, heft myself, broken leg and all, out of my apartment window onto the secured cabling line. Fortunately, the villain's apartment is slightly lower than mine, so with some painful but efficient scooching, I am able to use my bow and slide down the line straight into my villain's apartment. I bump up against his building with an impressive but painful thud and sort of half tossed myself off the line into the apartment. I clear most of the glass. Ouch. I crawl across the floor as my villain cusses at me and squirms. "Oh, just shut up," I finally say as I inch past him in his slightly crunchy, slightly sticky safety foam prison. I get to Johnny and yank a towel off the counter and press it to his bleeding head. He groans, I think, appreciatively. I lay down next to Johnny, exhausted but pleased. I keep the towel pressed to his head and pull out my mobile phone and dial my very good friend that doesn't think I'm annoying at all, Detective Rivera.
The world is in extreme crisis. Make it fast.
I need you to come here and bring an ambulance. I airdropped you my location. There's a long pause.
This is across the street from your apartment. What have you done?
Saved the day, as per usual. I'm making a citizen's arrest or an off-duty superhero arrest, whatever. You can decide what the paperwork situation is. Anyway, I am arresting this villain across the street from me that not only hit Johnny with a very heavy vase, but also has detailed plans in his apartment about blowing up the hospital. Apparently as a way of, I roll my eyes, stopping the virus. Is that right, sir? My villain bangs his head lightly on the floor. He hates me. Rivera sighs deeply on the other end.
Ambulance is on its way, Bishop. Walk me through the whole thing.
Well, you see, Rivera, it all began with this idea I had about ice arrows.
All right, once again, that was Marvel Tales. The More Things Change, the More They Stay the Same, a Kate Bishop story by Kelly Thompson. I would suggest if you enjoyed this, and I'm sure you did, go to Marvel Unlimited, check out West Coast Avengers, the entire 10-issue run by Kelly Thompson. That's on Marvel Unlimited. Kelly also wrote some Hawkeye comics starring Kate Bishop. Those are on Marvel Unlimited. Just terrific.